So, you've bought yourself a Xim Apex and you figure, hey, this shouldn't take too long to set up, but when you plug it in and download the app, you realize those default settings suck. Now you're tasked with learning about the complex mechanics of the app and device that has ballistic curves, advanced settings, controller bindings, auxiliary configs, boosts, analog movement behavior, and at some point you say, enough. Luckily, I'm here to help. These are my top 5 Xim Apex settings for Overwatch. I've collected these through what I've liked using over the past year, and I decided to share it with you guys. I recommend you guys to use all of these settings, even if you're used to using a Xim Apex, and choose the ones that work for you. They aren't in any particular order, they're just settings that I've found to be useful throughout the time I've used my Xim Apex, and I'll explain why each of them are worth putting on this list. Also, before the video starts, I'm Saucebag and I'm a fairly new channel, so if you like the video and you want to support me, if you subscribe, it'd help me so much. It's entirely free and it takes like 2 seconds of your time. Enjoy the video. Coming up first, we have UFKA settings. Probably one of the most used Overwatch settings in the year of 2020, and it's a pretty good basis for starting Xim users. I used this when I got started, and it's helped me find what's optimal for Overwatch with minor tweaks for my personal dexterity. It talks about the best DPI for Overwatch, which is agreeably 3200, off-sync or default sync, which is explained, and in-game settings that are, in my opinion, the best you'll find. I would suggest using the in-game settings suggested by this post because the next config is entirely for the mobile app, as it's used universally for all games, not just for Overwatch. Second, we have the MJ Fame config, and this is probably the most controversial config on the Xim Apex forums for the simple reason that it follows no rules set in earlier guides. This is for more advanced users that want true PC aim, and for many people they consider it to be the most accurate PC replication because it uses the native DPI of your mouse being 800 and uses the ballistic curve to raise or lower your sensitivity however you need to. I really like using these settings because it is accurate, like scarily accurate. There isn't much to work with when you try flicky turns like what most people normally see with a mouse and keyboard, but it does what the Xim Apex is meant to do, and it brings the PC experience to console. I tend to switch configs a lot, and sometimes I'll switch to this config if I'm overshooting targets or I need something more consistent. The guide is a little hard to follow, but if you're looking for the best one-to-one PC experience on console, this is your go-to. These next settings are Lime 232 settings, otherwise known as Hypnotic on YouTube. He used to be the #1 Widowmaker on PS4 and recently switched over to PC. I honestly really love these settings and there's almost no drawback to using it other than it's a little slow, but honestly it makes up for that with the safety bubble it puts on enemies. What these settings do really well is that it forgives risky flicks like normal controllers do with the accuracy of a mouse and keyboard. It's really cool that he shares the settings with us because most console players would rather not share the settings in fear of creating more competition. With Lime it's different. He's been helping the community for a while, and honestly I think you guys should check out his channel just to look at his clips. If you're playing Widowmaker, using this config is strongly recommended, but I always do suggest that you practice and tweak it to your liking so you can make it your own. Next we have Froey settings. I'd recommend these settings for people that are new and want to understand why these settings work rather than just finding out for themselves. My opinion though is that these settings are a little slow for my liking, but they're very accurate, and with his suggestions it's really easy to get used to if you play for an extended period of time. He also uses something that's pretty clever, which is an aim assist booster using Xim Central's guide. He uses 3200 DPI with a Xim sense of 11.5, which is similar to Lime settings, and it works best with medium to long range hit scans like Ashe, McCree, or Widowmaker. I find difficulty playing Tracer however because tracking high mobility targets like Mercy or Lucio are difficult, but hitting targets that are normally stationary like Ana or Zen is relatively easy. I would just say though that even if you aren't using these settings, really listen to what he has to say because he's an expert on how Overwatch's aiming system works on consoles, and I haven't found a more informational guide on Overwatch to date. Lastly, we have my settings. I included these last because I wanted you guys to learn about what inspired them and see my take on them. This config does require good aim and some getting used to. It only uses enough aim assist so that you can track enemies consistently without overshooting due to how fast it is. On the Xim Apex side, first I use 10,000 DPI with a sense of 115 on default sync. I don't use any ballistic curves or ADS configs unless it's Widow, and I use Lime 232 settings from earlier. I use 30 aim assist window size and 70 aim ease in. I don't like using aim smoothing because there's smoothing in the app and I feel like it makes your aim more sluggish rather than snappy, which is how I like it. For Ana I have 100 aim in sight because I think her aim assist removes the need to really aim as hard as you need to on PC, and this allows me to flick at people that are off of screen or I see that are really low that I need to get to really quickly. Lowering this does help, so if you think that you're overshooting targets or your aim just isn't consistent, I would suggest lowering this down. Before I wrap this up, just know that most of these people that created these settings, including myself, found their own personal preference using the guide from Xim Central. This is the YouTube channel run by Odin, one of the admins on the Xim Apex forums. I've linked all the settings discussed in the video in the description down below, and while you're down there, if you think that you have better settings to share, suggest them in the comments to help everybody else out. I'll pin the comment that I think is most helpful, so tell us what works for you. Also, if you haven't yet, make sure to follow my Twitter. I want to create a community that talks about our experiences on console openly, rather than just keeping it to ourselves in fear of criticism. Anyways, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.